Hello again. So we have covered the introduction part, and today I'll talk about the literature review. And if you remember, I told during the introduction session that while you're writing an introduction part, be aware that you are not writing a literature review. So when it comes to literature review, how would you write it? I will try to talk about this in this session. So what is a literature review, or why do we write it? Literature review is a defining component of the scientific argument. We are writing a scientific work, so we have to have a scientific argument under these work. So we write literature review to show that components. So in research papers or research proposals, we can write the literature review in two ways. One of them is giving the introduction, then giving the literature review as an extra part, extra section. Or in some papers, you can see literature review is given under the introduction as well. So it is up to the journal that you're writing, or up to your choice. So, roles of literature review. Why do we write a literature review? The first thing is to acknowledge others' contributions. You say, yes, I'm working on this, but there are so many scientists also worked on this field. So you should acknowledge the others' contributions. You also write the literature review to demonstrate your qualification as a member of the scholarly community. You say, okay, I'm writing this, and I am scholar enough to write this paper. See, I know it. See, I know the qualification of this field. So it is also written to project what the author perceives to be relevant work. You say, these are the relevant works with my works, so you are trying to show it to your readers. And it is also written to create a research territory, pointing to what is missing. As we talk about the niche, you are showing the territory, and you are showing the need for your new research, which is for the new research, which is your research exactly. So literature review usually is the most criticized component when you submit an article. Usually the referees or the reviewer sees it and criticize it, because literature review is expected to be more than a listing of the previous work. I remember I wrote an article and I submitted to a journal, and a reviewer sent me a review, and it was saying that your literature review, unfortunately, is just a listing of the previous work, but we are not expected this, okay? Be more than a listing of the previous work. We can search for the work, or we can see your references. It's not about the literature review. You should be conservative, substance, and style. You should stick with one style while writing your literature review. You are expected to be comprehensive and all-inclusive. For example, I remember when I was writing my master thesis, it was about the program evaluation, and I started writing my literature, and the first comment of my advisor was, Noonan is a very popular person in this field, so you should also include it. So you should be very inclusive regarding your topic. You shouldn't include for too many references, okay? I'm sure for the topics, for the common topics, there are dozens of references, but you should mention the important ones related to your work. And you're expected to contribute to a well-defined scientific argument. There should be a scientific argument, it should be well-defined, and your literature review should address it. You are expected to develop a coherent persuasive stance, guiding the reader to the conclusion that the new research is relevant. When the reader reads your literature review, he or she should say, these are the studies. Yes, this was also studied. This was also worked. But the topic of this paper I'm reading at the moment is a need. So you should provoke this idea. And as I told you, a very simple criticism is that your draft literature review is basically little more than a list of previous research papers in the field. While it's clearly well researched, it doesn't give me a sense of what has been more significant and less significant. It's hard to know where you stand. So when you write your literature review, it's important that you show your stance. So how will we prepare it? First of all, you have to identify relevant sources, okay? You should follow the process. Find the literature, read it, then write about it. You should focus on recent and relevant publications. For example, I see some articles that it is written in 2020, but the newest reference is regarding to, I don't know, 2000. No, it is old. Of course, if it is very important, you should mention it. There are some research, there are some terminologies that you should reference. They're very old, but you should dominantly focus on the recent and relevant publications. You should identify conceptual traditions and frameworks that have been used to examine similar topics or issues. Giving your theoretical framework, giving the background of your work is very important in the literature. You should keep a track of what you read in an annotated bibliography. Decide which potential areas you will omit and why. While you are writing, you should say, okay, I have read this, these are these, but you should know which ones to omit. Find problems, gaps, controversies in existing body of research, and it's important to declare them. You should critically evaluate each reference you discuss, okay? Don't just refer to an article because it is related to your topic. Be critical about it. Evaluate it. And conceptualize your review in such a way that it leaves an understanding of how your style will contribute to cumulative scholarly progress, okay? When I read your literature review, I should be able to say where you stand and where is your work on this literature. And there are so many ways organizing the sources. It could be about the date. It could be about the origin of the country, the origin of the work. It could be about the field, discipline related. You can organize your source according to genre. You can organize your sources according to perspective. I usually use the perspective one or the publication chronology part, publication date one, but it's up to you. You can decide which one to follow, or you can check the journals. So the first step of the literature is finding the literature. Second one is reading it and then writing it. So while reading, it is very important to be able to read it scholarly, okay? You should be critical as a reader, okay? Don't just read and summarize it to put it in your research. You should adopt a positive but skeptical stance. This is important because you're a researcher. You should be a skeptical one. You should see whether or why you agree with the claims. You should evaluate multiple sources and identify incompatible claims and contrasting evidence. You see something in the literature, but don't just read it, okay? Find something relevant. Find the other sources. And evaluate how effectively ideas are communicated through structure and language use. It's important. The literature would give you some ideas about the structure and the language that you can use in this field. So let's talk about some strategies to be able to write an effective literature review. So, first of all, while engaging sources, you should create an agreement with the sources. This is one of the ways, actually. So you can offer additional support. You can talk about the other sources that supports the claim. You can offer offer stronger evidence if it is weak. So you should be able to talk about the argument in that literature. Confirm unsupported claims. Okay. For example, you can say this source speculates that X may be true, but you don't think so, so offer something else, okay? This is the difference between a list of the work and literature review, okay? And apply claim more wildly. For example, blah blah claims that X is true in a specific situation, but this is not in these blah blahs, okay? This is important. You warrant the claims. This is not a list of previous work, but this is a compile of the works and you are working on the arguments of them. You can use create a disagreement with sources as well. It is good, but maybe it is not blah blah. You can use the contradictions. You can use part whole contradictions. X and is a kind of Y, but maybe it is not half blah blah blah. You can think about the developmental or historical contradictions. You can also mention them, or you can use an external cause-effect contradictions from the other research. But how can you use this? You can use these sentences to discuss or apply the source. For example, you talk about something and then you can say, this evidence greatly strengthens. Or in other words, it's blah, blah. So you should also add your argument as well. The inference follows that aspect. Again, I am saying this. You should discuss or apply the source so that it is not just a list. And be reasonable, okay? Hedging is an important thing while writing an academic paper. Not really prove or not reject, but be reasonable about the effect of the source. Also, you should establish a credibility of the source, okay? You should give some details to show the credibility of the source. You can talk about the participants, you can talk about this methodology or the data instruments, for example, or the setting, etc. And you should also talk about the result or the outcomes of the literature. You can show the important detail, the important result, etc. And life is not always good. Include sources that conflict with your position and identify the source of disagreement as well. You can just say, the source is outdated, it's really old, so the new era is about this, so I contradict with it. You can say, yes, this source is very nice, but the source focused on different assumptions. In this sense, from this aspect, etc. Or you can criticize opposing sources. For example, you can say, this is a good work, but this fails to include something, I don't know. Or it's very common that you found a methodological faults or mistakes. So as I told you, you have to integrate your sources, okay? You can alternate the types of the citations. Sometimes you can refer to the citation, refer to the work with an author prominence idea. So you focus on only one or two studies. You talk about some author and you focus on the studies of these authors. Or you can go on as research prominence. You consolidate many studies and make general comments while integrating the sources. So how would you do it? Analyze two or more sources on the target topic. Infer and make explicit relationship among them. Okay, read it critically. Work on the sources into a discussion. Combine, do not just summarize a work. Summarize, paraphrase, quote, but then analyze it, comment on it, to reveal your understanding of the research topic in the view of the accepted knowledge and debates in your field. Actually, this is the main reason why you're writing a literature review. You can use short quotations while writing a literature review, which is which is you shouldn't do it so much, okay? Don't do this so much very often, but sometimes if quotation is really concise, you can use it. Or with the block, you can use a long quotation, but do not overuse it. Or you can just summarize or paraphrase it and without quoting and give your reference. So while summarize, focus on the main message, okay? Do not talk about specific points, but focus on the main message. The Access and Literature on Online Teaching strongly suggested that blah, blah, blah. Studies have shown that blah, blah is associated with blah, blah. Or for example, studies have shown that technostress is associated with overuse of Zoom, I know. Or you can paraphrase with your words, but while paraphrasing, please avoid plagiarism, okay? You are restating the verse of another author by giving a reference. Although you paraphrase, although these sentences belong to you, you got the idea from another author, so you should give a reference as well. So while writing, how should we sound? It's up to you. You can use past, present perfect, present continuous, or just present tenses. But be consistent, okay? If you're talking about literature using past simple, stick with it. Through all literature review, use past tense, okay? Be consistent. I personally usually prefer to have past simple, but it's up to you. So while using the past, reference to a single study, okay? Yes, you talk about a single study using past simple. Or you can say, this found this found that, etc. If, of course, you can also combine this, then you refer to a study, then you will refer to an area of inquiry. It's a general one. So you can use present perfect or present continuous, since you are referenced to an inquiry, to an area. And with the general accepted knowledge, you can use present tenses. So, for example, it's a very basic example, but water boils at 100 centigrade degrees. It boils, okay? You shouldn't say it boiled. Of course you can, but be logical. While you're writing a literature, you should be careful about taking a stance. Literature writing is not impersonal or not a simple matter of objective reporting scientific content, okay? It is very personal. Otherwise, it becomes a list. So as a writer, you should convey your perspective, your attitude towards the work, okay? It is really personal. Let's look at the examples. For example, in the first example, it expresses an agreement in the field. Or you can also express your disagreement. So it is very personal, okay? You give the reference, you talk about the study, and you show your stance. Or you can use the other things to show that you don't have any doubt, or to show that you're impressed by the work. And as I told you before, using hedging, using the hedge words is very important while writing an academic paper. For example, hedge means you use the words that are not really clear cut. These are the words that will hold your full commitment to a point. You can use some boosters to emphasize the certainty of your claim. And also you can use some attitude markers to indicate your evaluative attitude, as you see here. So while taking a stance, you can use these words to be able to strengthen your sense, you can use widely or broadly. You can use the verbs accepted, agree, debate, disagree, believe, establish. Nouns, noun forms of them. So, to wrap up, while writing a literature review, remember to evaluate sources critically. Be a critical reader. Synthesize previous research. Synthesize them, okay? Add your comments them as well, while engaging sources creatively and take a stance. If you don't evaluate sources critically, you most probably will write just a summary. If you don't synthesize previous research, most probably you will just give a list of references. No synthesis, but you just write in the one paragraph, one study, in the second paragraph, another study, in the third paragraph, another study. And actually, these go hand in hand. If you don't engage sources creatively and take a stance, you just provide a list of the previous work, but not the place that you stand. So this is about the literature review. I hope it would be beneficial while writing it. See you in the next sessions.